History is full of all kinds of rankings, but among the darkest is the list of women who became symbols of cruelty and inhumanity. In this grim selection, third place is taken by a very young woman, only 23 years old, fragile in appearance, almost innocent at first glance. Irma Grese. Even today, decades later, her name still triggers shock and nausea. What she did is recognized as a crime against humanity. The future overseer was born in Germany into a large family. Her childhood was troubled and unstable. When the girl was 13, her mother, worn down by her husband's constant infidelity and endless family quarrels, drank hydrochloric acid. She died in a horrific way, leaving 5 children to a father who had long lost any connection with the family. The children were effectively left on their own. The siblings tried to survive as best they could. Irma, still a teenager, dropped out of school shortly after turning 15. Later, she joined the League of German Girls, where she quickly became an active member. She changed one occupation after another, and when in 1942 she heard about the SS volunteer recruitment, she decided to respond. She wasn't even 20. This is how Irma ended up in Ravensbrück, a women's concentration camp, where she first came into contact with prisoners. It was likely there that she realized this type of environment suited her inner world. After some time, in March 1943, Grese asked to be transferred to the Auschwitz-Birkenau camp system. That is how she arrived at the women's section of Auschwitz, one of the most horrifying places on earth. And it was there that her name became a symbol of terror. The young woman quickly demonstrated zeal and harshness, which caught the attention of her superiors. In a short time, she became a senior overseer. In the camp, she was considered second in authority after the leadership. Her promotion surprised no one. Among the prisoners, Irma had loud nicknames that spoke for themselves. She was called the Beautiful Monster, the Blonde Devil, the Angel of Death. The fate of 30,000 women depended on her moods and whims. The territory over which Grese had full control included 30 barracks with 1,000 prisoners each. Survivors recalled that Irma's appearance was deceptive. She always showed up with a neat hairstyle, perfectly arranged curls. She wore a light blue jacket that matched her eyes, even though such clothing violated uniform rules. She smelled of expensive perfume. This created a painful contrast. Emaciated women in rags saw before them someone who seemed to belong to another world, someone who had hot water, fresh food, clean clothes. But in the hands of this blonde woman was a whip decorated with pearls. She loved beauty in everything, even in her instruments of torture. One former prisoner, Gisela Pearl, later said that Grese was one of the most attractive women she had ever seen. An angelic face, blue eyes, graceful movements. She walked around the campgrounds and inevitably drew attention. Some looked at her with envy, others with terror. Irma herself, like a queen, dressed in ways that highlighted the color of her eyes, and even her whip was inlaid like a piece of jewelry. If Grese's cruelty had been limited to her contrasting appearance, she would never have risen so high. But she enjoyed watching the experiments performed on prisoners by the camp's infamous doctor, Joseph Mengele. Moreover, she personally selected victims for him. It is possible that these experiments inspired Irma to create her own methods of torment. Pregnant women became one of her main targets. While they were waiting to give birth, she left them alone. Everything started later. At the moment of childbirth, Irma tied the women's legs together and watched their suffering. This could last for hours. The newborn often died shortly after birth. In most cases, the mother didn't survive either. And if by some miracle a woman did live, Irma, having satisfied her curiosity, sent her to the gas chamber. She personally chose people who were to die in the gas. She was especially drawn to relatives who could be separated, as well as women with pleasant appearances. She tolerated no competition. Grese kept her own kennel. The dogs were barely fed. Sometimes they weren't fed at all. This was intentional. If a prisoner collapsed from weakness, a pack was immediately set on her. The consequences were obvious. Irma also wore special boots with sharp metal toes. With this footwear, she beat women who irritated her. No reason was needed. If a prisoner happened to be nearby at the wrong moment, Grese could strike her without hesitation. She also loved using her whip. She often beat people until they stopped breathing. When she was in a good mood, Irma arranged a kind of entertainment. One of her favorite amusements was Russian roulette. She made several women stand in a circle, took a revolver, and pointed it at them one by one. The trigger clicked, creating the sense of an imminent end. Sometimes the game went differently. She simply held the gun ready while the prisoners did not know when the shot might come. From her room, survivors remembered one more detail. The lampshade of her desk lamp was made from the skin of a camp prisoner. This became the ultimate symbol of her sadism. Despite her cruelty, there were episodes that confused people. Sometimes she showed a form of care. For example, one prisoner asked for help for her sick sister. Irma ordered the sick woman to be taken to the kitchen and given extra food. She also favored the musicians of the camp orchestra and treated them more gently. But these cases only emphasized her unpredictability rather than suggesting kindness. Grese considered herself the greatest beauty of Auschwitz. She enjoyed attention. She was openly nymphomaniac. Among her lovers were Dr. Mengele and the camp commandant. But she didn't stop with men. Irma periodically had relationships with female prisoners, choosing young and attractive ones. This once again hinted at serious psychological disturbances that flourished amid the surrounding brutality. When the Red Army began its advance and approached Auschwitz, Grese took part in driving prisoners to Ravensbrück. But in March 1945, when that camp also came under threat, Irma was sent to Bergen-Belsen. There, she was arrested by British forces on April 17th. By the time the camp was liberated, around 60,000 people remained alive, and about 10,000 bodies lay unburied. The guards were forced to dig mass graves. Grese dug these pits under armed watch. The British military prosecution began investigating the crimes committed by the guards of the death camps. Irma was among the accused. A total of 45 people were put on trial. They were charged with torture, murder, violations of the laws of war, and inhumane treatment of prisoners. The trial started on September 17, 1945. The Belsen Tribunal proved the guilt of all defendants. Contrary to myths that Nazi criminals behaved courageously in court, many tried to escape responsibility. Irma too. At first she claimed she ended up in the camp against her will, supposedly assigned by the Imperial Labor Service. But later, realizing that excuses were pointless, she fell silent and behaved more calmly. By the end of the trial, 11 people, including Grese, were sentenced to hanging. The night before her execution, she sang songs together with another condemned overseer, Elisabeth Volkenrath. Irma was hanged on November 4, 1945. In her final letter, she told her family she was glad to die for the ideals of the Third Reich. Her burial place, according to regulations, was not marked. However, years later neo-Nazis claimed they had found Grese's grave. Police reported that admirers of fascist ideology had already begun gathering there.